All right, guys, welcome back to Court Queen's Breakdown, and today we are going to see what happened between the Indiana Fever and the Phoenix Mercury. But before we do that, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe because it really helps. Now let's get into the video. The blowout in Phoenix. Indiana's road trip hit rock bottom in a 95-60 drubbing by the Mercury, a game that slipped from cold start to full-on collapse before halftime. The Fever couldn't buy a bucket early, looking disjointed as passes were picked off and open looks rimmed out while Phoenix sprinted ahead. The numbers underline the mess. Indiana shot just 34.3% from the field and an icy 7 for 30 from deep. More damaging, their 22 turnovers became a conveyor belt of easy points the other way, 42 for Phoenix, swinging momentum each time the Fever tried to steady themselves. When you're gifting more points off giveaways than you're getting from three, you're cooked. Phoenix dictated everything. On the glass, 44-32, in pace, and with pressure that turned routine actions into scrambled counters. Indiana's offense never found a rhythm. Possessions devolved into stagnant motion, late clock heaves, and telegraphed entries. On a night when Kelsey Mitchell struggled, there was no secondary engine to keep the car moving. This wasn't just a shooting slump, it was a systems failure. Spacing, decision-making, and ball security all broke at once. By the time Indiana settled, Phoenix was playing chess to Indiana's checkers, stacking stops into runouts and punctuating makes with energy that fed the building. The result? One of the season's most lopsided losses, and a sobering snapshot of how fragile the Fever can look when their structure cracks. The injuries that stung. As the scoreboard tilted, the night got worse. Two guards went down. Sidney Colson exited with a left knee injury. Arie McDonald later hobbled off with a right foot issue. Post-game, the staff kept it simple. Further evaluation back home. But the damage to Indiana's rotation was immediate and obvious. With Colson's tempo setting and on-ball pestering gone, Phoenix cranked up pressure without fear of counters. McDonald's downhill burst, one of the few ways the Fever cracks at defenses, was suddenly off the table. Lineup shrank, ball handlers wore down, and turnovers ballooned as Phoenix sat on passing lanes. The human side hit just as hard. You could see the bench tilt from frustration to concern, players circling their teammates during timeouts and after the buzzer. In a game already slipping away, the injuries turned bad loss into costly night, magnifying how thin the margin is when Indiana's guard core isn't whole. Big picture, these aren't just minutes to replace, they're identities. Colson's voice and organization, McDonald's pace and pressure at the point of attack, both are part of the team's backbone. The Fever talked resilience afterward, but the X and O reality is blunt. Without both guards, Indiana's handle-by-committee approach invites traps, slows tempo, and stresses an offense that was already wobbling. Sophie Cunningham's lone stand. In a game where Indiana's offense sputtered and confidence leaked away possession by possession, Sophie Cunningham refused to fold. Returning to Phoenix for the first time in a Fever jersey, she played like someone with unfinished business, dropping 18 points on efficient shooting, hustling on both ends, and injecting life into possessions that were otherwise flat. Cunningham's night wasn't just about numbers. She attacked in transition when others hesitated, chased offensive boards, and fought through contact to keep the scoreboard from turning into an even bigger embarrassment. When Phoenix defenders closed hard, she moved the ball decisively. When they sagged, she made them pay from deep. Emotionally, she carried the energy her team lacked. While most of the Fever looked detached from the moment, Sophie got chippy with Alyssa Thomas, DeWanna Bonner, and Kahleah Copper, showing the kind of competitive edge that can shift momentum if others match it. The contrast was stark, one player treating the matchup like a rivalry, the rest struggling to match the urgency. For Cunningham, this wasn't just another road game. It was a return to a city where she built her career, a stage to prove her value to her new team, and a personal battle she wasn't willing to lose, scoreboard aside. If the rest of the roster had matched Sophie's motor, Indiana might not have been run out of the gym before the fourth quarter. Instead, her fire stood out as the lone spark in a cold night. DeWanna Bonner's revenge game. Former Fever star DeWanna Bonner turned the matchup into a personal statement, pouring in 23 points and amplifying every make with theatrics. From stare-downs to jawing at the Fever bench, her energy was unmistakably revenge-tinged. Multiple dust-ups dotted the night, most notably with Lexi Hull, whom Bonner allegedly called a bum, and with Sophie Cunningham, trading bumps and words after whistles. It wasn't just the buckets, it was the show. Bonner hunted moments, jumping passing lanes for run-out steals, posing after threes, and lingering on celebrations like each play carried extra history. Post-game, she framed the performance as rediscovering joy and edge, an emotional reset after feeling detached from the game, while coach Nate Tibbetts lauded her veteran fire and competitive focus. For Indiana, the optics stung. As they tended to injuries and spoke about togetherness, Phoenix rode Bonner's swagger and fed off the arena's juice. Whether you read it as leadership by fire or a pointed jab at former teammates, Bonner's night set the tone and rubbed salt in it. Trash talk and tension on the court. If the scoreboard didn't make things spicy enough, the in-game chatter certainly did. DeWanna Bonner's confrontations went beyond normal competitiveness. She was in full verbal attack mode. The flashpoint came when she allegedly turned to Lexi Hull after hitting a shot and called her a bum straight to her face. Bonner didn't stop there. She punctuated baskets with stare-downs, barked toward the Fever bench, and exchanged words with Sophie Cunningham whenever their paths crossed. These weren't passing moments. They were deliberate acts meant to unsettle and embarrass her former teammates. The Mercury's bench fed off it, cheering and celebrating each jab like a knockout blow. Meanwhile, Indiana's response was subdued, apart from Hull, who stood her ground and refused to flinch under Bonner's glare. It was clear that for Bonner, this wasn't just basketball, it was personal theater. And in that theater, she cast herself as the show's star, leaving the Fever to decide whether to engage or try to play through the noise. 2 locker rooms, 2 realities. When the horn sounded, the split screen couldn't be sharper. Phoenix leaned into the spectacle, celebrations, big smiles, and a victory lap tone that matched the on-court taunts. Bonner and teammates talked edge, emotion, and finding the joy, framing the night as a personal recharge as much as a win. Indiana, meanwhile, closed ranks. The conversation centered on Sydney Colson's left knee and Ari McDonald's right foot, on staying connected, and on weathering a stretch where injuries and execution collided. Players echoed the same themes: unity, resilience, next man up, over any temptation to trade barbs. The optics were telling. One side flexed, the other triaged. Phoenix amplified a rivalry vibe. The Fever emphasized care for their own and accountability for a breakdown that went beyond bad shooting. In defeat, Indiana's message was culture first, protect your people, learn fast, move on, while Phoenix made sure the emotional scoreboard read just as lopsided as the final one. Sophie's podcast revelation. After the blowout, Sophie Cunningham shifted the conversation from the court to conduct. On her podcast, she said plainly that DeWanna Bonner left the Fever mid-season without so much as a goodbye text to teammates. No explanation privately or publicly. Sophie called that a breach of basic professional courtesy. Even a short, "didn't work out, good luck," would have honored the relationships built in the locker room. Crucially, Sophie wasn't taking a hatchet to Bonner's game. She praised her as Hall of Fame caliber and acknowledged that Indiana wasn't making her happy, something Sophie said she genuinely wants for any player. But she drew a bright line. If you choose to leave, expect the booze and own the exit. For Sophie, leadership is as much about how you leave as how you play. By airing this, she reframed Bonner's Phoenix fireworks. What looked like a triumphant "I'm back" performance read, in Sophie's telling, as a revenge night following an unprofessional exit, and the silence that fueled the awkwardness that followed. Respect, accountability, and the line between. Sophie's message wasn't bitterness, it was a framework. She held 2 truths at once: demand the talent, demand the standards. Bonner deserves her flowers, deserves to be happy, and is still a bucket from anywhere. But the jersey comes with obligations beyond scoring. Communicate, close loops, and honor the room. Cunningham spelled out the baseline. A simple goodbye text, a quick, "this didn't work, wishing y'all well," would have diffused the tension. That's not politicking, it's professional hygiene. The stuff veterans model so young players learn how to carry themselves. In doing so, Sophie drew Indiana's cultural border. We can applaud greatness and still call out lapses. Accountability isn't a drag, it's glue. It keeps trust intact through losses, injuries, and noise. And on a night when the Fever were outplayed and outshouted, that standard, quiet, unfancy, non-negotiable, was the clearest win they had. Culture clash, me versus we. The game exposed a fault line that goes beyond schemes. Phoenix's Me Forward Theater versus Indiana's We First ethos. Bonner's night, electric, pointed, performative, cast her as a soloist proving a point. Indiana, even while reeling, defaulted to collective care, circling injured teammates, preaching resilience, and keeping the focus inward. That contrast sharpened around Lexi Hull and Sophie Cunningham. Hull stared down the taunts without shrinking. Sophie shouldered the emotional load and kept competing when the air was gone from the building. Their posture, tough, team-anchored, accountable, is the identity the Fever survived toward. It isn't flashy, and it doesn't always win the headline, but it travels, it survives adversity, and it compounds. On a brutal night, the scoreboard favored Phoenix. The cultural compass still pointed north in Indiana's room. The long view, turning pain into fuel. Zooming out, Phoenix was a stress test, and the tape shows both the cracks and the steel. The cracks, thin ball handling depth, turnover spirals, rhythm that evaporates when a primary scorer struggles. The steel, a core that rallies around each other, with Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hull modeling poise, edge, and accountability when the scoreboard goes south. That's why this loss can still age well. It clarifies priorities, protect the handle, simplify late clock actions, and hardwire an identity that doesn't wobble under pressure. With Caitlin Clark's return looming, those fixes become multiplicative, more spacing, cleaner reads, and fewer possessions where the offense dies on the vine. The message after a 35-point thud isn't false bravado, it's sequencing. Get healthy, tighten the decision tree, lean into the we first standard that survived a rough night. Do that, and this game turns from a scar into scaffolding, the kind you climb when the real tests come, and the wins that matter need a backbone already built.